As those of you who have read the report already know, I was tasked to focus on al-Qaeda in 2022 and 2023. I'll simply go through the different war theaters where al-Qaeda plays a role today in order to find out where the organization might play a role in the coming months and years, and where it might pose a major threat, mainly, of course, well, to the regions where it operates and to Europe and the Western world. If you take a look at al-Qaeda today in 2023, the picture is somewhat ambivalent. On the one hand, the victory of the Taliban in 2021 was a major victory for al-Qaeda as well, although, and that is why I say the situation is ambivalent, although the organization was severely weakened at that point already. It had suffered tremendous losses inflicted, especially on its leadership in the years between 2008, 2009, and 2012. Then losses were inflicted on it by Islamic State, ISIS, ISIL, ISIS-K, and ever since the organization has suffered from a profound inability to mobilize and recruit, especially the youngest supporters of the jihadist movement. Most of the young jihadists simply prefer to join ISIS and not al-Qaeda anymore. So the first theater that I would like to take a look at is Afghanistan and Pakistan and the role played by al-Qaeda central. The victory of 2021 was truly a historical one, not only for the Taliban, but also for al-Qaeda. Nevertheless, the organization today is only a shadow of its former self, and that is mainly due to the losses it suffered in the years between 2008, 2009, and 2012. It not only lost its historical leader, Osama bin Laden, but many members of its leadership team who could not be adequately replaced in the meantime. Secondly, its leader in all these years, until summer 2022, the Egyptian Ayman al-Zawahiri, had to stay in hiding in order to avoid being killed by American drone strikes, and often lost contact to al-Qaeda affiliates, lost contact to other parts of the al-Qaeda leadership in Iran. And now in 2023, he is dead. And al-Qaeda has entered a period of leadership crisis. His presumed successor, the Egyptian Saif al-Adl, has spent the last 20 years in Tehran, and as it seems, he still remains in Iran, and that leaves the organization with a major problem, probably the main factor in its avoiding to publicly announce the leadership of Saif al-Adl. We theoretically, well, we do not know who the new leader of al-Qaeda is, and I think the major reason is that he is still based in Iran. It's safer than in Iran than in other places worldwide for an al-Qaeda leader. At the same time, it's very hard to exert any influence on the jihadist movement from a place, from the capital of the sworn enemy of this very movement. Its only hope for relevance, al-Qaeda's only hope for relevance, are the affiliates worldwide. I believe that Afghanistan, al-Qaeda in Afghanistan does not play any major role anymore. It has been reduced to a supportive role for years already, and its presence is minor. And counting organizations as the TTP or the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan as parts of this as part of the al-Qaeda movement, as I believe would be a mistake. Secondly, the second theater, that's al-Qaeda in Syria and the Middle East, the Arab Middle East in general. Since 2013, the leadership around Ayman al-Zawahiri and the leadership in Iran concentrated on trying to build an alternative base to Afghanistan in Syria, mainly through its then affiliate in Syria, the al-Nusra Front, and the so-called Khorasan group. The organization profited from releases of major al-Qaeda leaders by Iran in 2015, but a little bit later in 2017, it suffered a catastrophic defeat, one might argue, in Syria, simply because its affiliate, the Nusra Front, left the network. At first, I didn't believe that the Nusra Front was really distancing itself from al-Qaeda, but in the end it did. Al-Qaeda tried to counter this event by founding a new affiliate organization, an organization called Hurras ad-Din, or the Guardians of Religion, sometimes also simply called Al-Qaeda Syria, but this group has not managed to counter the Nusra Front, and most of its leading members are today in jail. They have been ever since 2020, and the organization has not managed to start any new activities for the last nearly three years now. Still, I would always count Syria as a potentially important place for the al-Qaeda movement, simply because so many jihadists are still alive. Most al-Qaeda loyalists are, as I have said, in jails operated by the Nusra Front, which today calls itself the Liberation Authority Syria, or HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but at least they are alive. And if the situation changes in Syria, it is well possible that members of the organization will become active again. But for the time being, al-Qaeda in Syria is not a force to be reckoned with anymore. A second point, though, a word of caution, is that even among Nusra Front ranks today, there is still a relatively high number of foreign terrorist fighters. They remain jihadists, although the organization might have moderated its ideology and its strategy. These people are still out there, and there is a reason for the fact that most of their home governments still believe that these people are a threat. Thirdly, the situation in West Africa. I believe that over there, al-Qaeda has the biggest potential of all these three theaters that I have mentioned. And that is mainly because one affiliate organization has transcended its own ethnic and national boundaries in recent years. And of course, I speak of al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, or AQIM. That is traditionally an Algerian organization which moved to the Sahel ever since the early 2000s. And in quite a long process, this organization has managed to become a Sahelian rather than an Algerian organization. This all began with the French intervention in January 2013, which proved to be a major setback to the organization, which by then had already regrouped in Mali and surrounding countries. And from 2015, it could be, or one could witness that the organization had made a I remember a very influential article in the New York Times where the author spoke about Al-Qaeda's branch in Africa's lethal comeback. And I think one of the reasons for this comeback is that the organization had competition by the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, and secondly, that as the one Al-Qaeda affiliate, it managed to fight this competition successfully. In March 2017, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and all its allies built a new organization which called itself the Group for the Support of Islam and the Muslims, or in its acronym JNIM. And this organization has become the dominant jihadist actor in Mali and its neighboring countries from 2017. Inter alia, threatening the very existence of the state in northern Burkina Faso. But what is most important about this new organization is that it is not an exclusively Arab and Berber organization, just like Akim was, but we do see an alliance of nationalities and ethnic communities transcending this very social base. And that is something, if you have watched Al-Qaeda historically, that has proved to be very problematic for the organization at all times. It first had problems because the Egyptians seemed to be dominating the organization. Then there were protests against the organization not showing a major interest in the events in Palestine. Later on, it was considered to be purely Arab. And now we do have one affiliate that has managed to transcend its original social base, and we do not know what the consequences are. So in order to summarize, I believe that if we take a look at the Al-Qaeda network, it is, of course, JNIM is the force to watch, especially if combined with the uptake in migration movements from West Africa. Although the organization has shown no interest in international attacks yet, international attacks meaning outside of its area of operations around Mali, I think it is only a matter of time until the organization will try to organize such attacks. Secondly, Syria remains a risky place, if only because of the massive presence of jihadists in jails. And here I will add to my original topic that we're not only talking about HTS, about THD, Horas ad-Din and Al-Qaeda Syria prisoners in HTS jails, but we are also still talking about 2,000 former ISIS fighters who are sitting in Kurdish and perhaps some in American jails, which are not always well protected. This is a major this is a major problem, because this is the most important, the biggest potential recruitment pool for jihadists worldwide. And if I now enlarge my view of the situation, I would always argue that besides JNIM, ISIS-K is probably the most important threat that the international community will have to deal with in the coming years. And for the time being, I do see ISIS-K as the bigger threat. And if you take a look at what the organization has done in recent years, I think three developments are important. First, the organization has started to publish its own English language, also Pashto, but English language magazine called The Voice of Khorasan. And historically, every organization that has published such a magazine developed or had already developed in an international agenda. That was the case with al-Qaeda in Yemen when it published Inspire. That was the case with ISIS in Iraq and Syria when it published Dabiq. And I believe that the ISIS-K will develop its international agenda as well. Secondly, we do see a major uptick in ISIS-K activities in Pakistan in recent years. That might still not be, or the organization is still not as important as TTP. It might probably never be, but the organization's activities show us that it is internationally minded in South Asia. And thirdly, the organization still tries to direct attacks in other countries. I think last time that we met, I spoke about the plan of several Tajik citizens living in Germany who had been directed by a Tajik ISIS-K member in Afghanistan to perpetrate attacks in Germany. In the meantime, there has been some other evidence that the organization has continued to try to find European jihadists in order to perpetrate attacks on its behalf. So in practical terms, I believe that we will see more efforts by ISIS-K to perpetrate attacks in neighboring countries, neighboring Afghanistan, and we will see ISIS-K trying to perpetrate more directed attacks worldwide, especially in Europe, simply because the number of potential supporters is especially high here. Thank you.